Music is supposed to entertain us, to comfort us, to bring people together, but sometimes music does something else entirely. Sometimes it divides nations. Sometimes it sparks violence. Sometimes it creates subcultures so extreme they blur the line between art and real-world consequences. Welcome to Music Explained. Tonight, we're diving into sounds that didn't just live in headphones, but spilled into streets, courtrooms, churches, politics, and blood-stained headlines. These aren't just genres, they're movements, warnings, and in some cases, crimes with a soundtrack. Before we begin, like the video, subscribe to Music Explained and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future deep dives into the hidden stories behind sound. Now, let's begin with a genre so infamous it didn't just shock the world, it became a criminal case file. Case 1. Black metal. When music burned churches. What if a music genre didn't just sound evil, but inspired murder, arson, and terror in real life? Black metal didn't just shock the world, it forced police investigations. In the early 1990s, Norway's underground metal scene became something far darker than distorted guitars and corpse paint. What began as an extreme artistic rejection of Christianity slowly transformed into real-world violence. Young musicians gathered around record shops like Helvet in Oslo, a place that became ground zero for radical ideology. Bands like Mayhem, Burzum, and Darkthrone pushed aesthetics rooted in Satanism, paganism, and anti-Christian rage. But some members didn't stop at symbolism. Between 1992 and 1994, at least 50 churches were burned across Norway. Medieval wooden stave churches, national heritage sites, were reduced to ash. The perpetrators weren't anonymous extremists, they were musicians. In 1993, black metal crossed a line that could never be undone. Øystein Euronymous Arseth, guitarist of Mayhem, was murdered by fellow musician Varg Vikernes, stabbed repeatedly in an apartment stairwell. The killing shocked the global music community. Vikernes was later convicted for murder and church arsons, receiving Norway's maximum sentence at the time. International media descended on the scene, turning black metal into a global moral panic. Ironically, the attention only solidified the genre's mythos. Black metal spread worldwide, to Eastern Europe, South America, even Southeast Asia, influencing countless bands. But it would forever carry the weight of its origin story, proof that music can radicalize, not just inspire. But while black metal burned churches in silence, another genre exploded loudly, straight into America's living rooms. And this time, the government was watching. Case 2. Gangsta rap. Lyrics on trial. Can a song be considered a threat? In the late 1980s, American politicians believed the answer was yes. Gangsta rap emerged from communities plagued by poverty, police brutality, and systemic racism. Artists like NWA, Ice-T, and later Tupac Shakur used raw, unfiltered lyrics to document their reality. But to authorities, this wasn't storytelling, it was incitement. In 1989, the FBI sent a formal warning letter to NWA's record label over the song Bon Va Police. Radio stations banned tracks. Albums were pulled from shelves. Politicians publicly condemned the genre, yet the censorship only amplified its reach. Gangsta rap forced America into a conversation it had been avoiding. Were these artists glorifying violence or simply reporting it? Court cases soon followed. Lyrics were used as evidence in criminal trials, a controversial practice that continues today. Critics argued it criminalized black expression. Supporters claimed it prevented real-world harm. Meanwhile, East Coast-West Coast rivalries escalated. Media sensationalism blurred the line between persona and person. Mid-1990s, the genre reached its darkest moment, the murders of Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G. While not caused by music alone, the violence surrounding the scene became inseparable from its legacy. Gangsta rap survived, but permanently changed. It became both a commercial juggernaut and a legal battleground. But if gangsta rap fought the system with words, another genre did it with 3 chords, safety pins, and pure chaos, and the UK was not ready. Case 3. Punk rock. Anarchy goes prime time. What happens when rebellion isn't poetic and but spits directly into the camera? Punk rock exploded into Britain during economic collapse. Youth unemployment soared. The monarchy symbolized everything broken. And then came the Sex Pistols. Fast, ugly, loud. Punk rejected technical skill in favor of raw anger. Lyrics mocked authority, patriotism, and the future itself. In 1977, God Save the Queen was released during the Queen's Silver Jubilee. Radio bans followed. Immediately, the BBC refused to play it. Politicians labeled it treason, yet it climbed the charts anyway. Live performances descended into chaos. TV appearances ended in profanity scandals. Parents panicked. Schools banned punk fashion. Violence between punks and police became common. But punk wasn't just noise, it was DIY revolution. Anyone could start a band. Anyone could speak. Punk democratized music production and reshaped fashion, zines, and youth identity worldwide. Though the original explosion burned out quickly, punk's influence echoed through hardcore, post-punk, and alternative rock for decades. It proved one thing unmistakably: music doesn't need permission to matter. Case 4. Drill music. When lyrics became crime scene footage. What if a song didn't just describe violence, but was treated as a confession? In the early 2010s, drill music exploded out of Chicago's South Side, a place already scarred by gang warfare, poverty, and heavy police presence. Drill was raw, aggressive, and brutally honest, with artists like Chief Keef, Lil Jojo, and later UK drill artists narrating street life in real time. The problem wasn't just the violence in the lyrics, it was how closely those lyrics mirrored actual shootings, feuds, and murders happening blocks away. Police departments began monitoring music videos, dissecting lyrics, and mapping rivalries directly from YouTube uploads. In several cases, prosecutors cited drill lyrics as supporting evidence in criminal trials, arguing they showed intent or gang affiliation. Critics pushed back, claiming this criminalized self-expression and disproportionately targeted young black artists. In Chicago and later London, drill videos were removed. Artists were issued performance bans, and entire subgenres were placed under surveillance. Despite or because of this pressure, drill spread globally, evolving into UK drill and influencing mainstream rap production. The outcome was a chilling precedent: music that could be interpreted as evidence, blurring the line between art, documentation, and criminal suspicion. Sources for this case include Chicago Police Department public statements, UK Metropolitan Police injunction records, and investigative reporting by The Guardian and Pitchfork. And yet, as drill showed how dangerously real music could become, another genre emerged that felt unreal on purpose: slow, dreamy, and hauntingly empty. Case 5. Vaporwave. The genre that sounded like a dying mall. It sounded like a shopping mall after closing time, empty, echoing, and strangely unsettling. Vaporwave didn't announce itself with violence or protest. Instead, it crept into the internet quietly, disguising social criticism as nostalgia. Around 2010, Vaporwave appeared almost accidentally on the internet, built from chopped and screwed elevator music, 80s corporate jingles, smooth jazz, and Windows startup sounds. Artists hid behind pseudonyms, album covers, featured glitch art, Greek statues, and abandoned shopping malls, and songs felt like echoes of a past that never quite existed. Vaporwave wasn't just music, it was a critique of late-stage capitalism, consumerism, and artificial happiness. Listeners described it as comforting and disturbing at the same time, like remembering something you never lived through. The genre spread through forums, Tumblr pages, and YouTube playlists, with albums released for free or anonymously. Eventually, it became self-aware, even parodying itself, raising questions about whether anti-capitalist art could survive once it became aesthetic content. Vaporwave influenced fashion, graphic design, advertising, and meme culture, despite rarely appearing on traditional charts. Its real-world impact wasn't violent or criminal, it was psychological and cultural, changing how digital native generations process nostalgia and identity. Sources include academic essays on digital culture, interviews, archived by Bandcamp Daily, and retrospectives from Vice and The Atlantic. But while Vaporwave faded into irony and introspection, another genre refused subtlety altogether, instead choosing bass lines loud enough to shake walls and messages strong enough to unite a movement. Case 6. Reggae. Music as political weapon in 1970s. Jamaica. A song could get you followed, a concert could get you shot, and a melody could mark you as a political threat. Reggae was far more than laid-back island music. It was a political force intertwined with poverty, violence, and spiritual resistance. Rooted in Rastafarian beliefs, reggae artists like Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and Burning Spear used music to speak directly against colonial oppression, police brutality, and political corruption. At the height of Jamaica's political unrest, concerts became dangerous gatherings. In 1976, just days before the Smile Jamaica concert meant to calm political tensions, gunmen attacked Bob Marley's home, injuring him and several others. Despite being wounded, Marley still performed, turning the concert into a symbol of defiance. Reggae became a voice for the marginalized, spreading messages of unity, resistance, and black liberation far beyond the Caribbean. Governments monitored it, politicians tried to co-opt it, but reggae endured, influencing global protest movements and shaping genres from punk to hip-hop. Its outcome was historic, music that directly altered political discourse and inspired activism worldwide. Sources include Jamaican Historical Archives, BBC documentaries, and Bob Marley Institute records. And yet, as reggae proved music could unite people across borders, the next genre would show what happens when music is engineered, not organically born, and the cost that comes with perfection. Case 7. K-pop. Perfection built on control. Before the world saw flawless choreography and billion-view music videos, there were contracts that teenagers weren't allowed to question. Modern K-pop was engineered in South Korea during the late 1990s as a tightly controlled idol system, where entertainment companies recruited children as young as 12 and placed them into years of unpaid or low-paid training. Every detail of their lives was monitored: diet, weight, dating, speech, even social media behavior. Idols were not just musicians, they were products designed for emotional attachment. Behind the scenes, grueling schedules, sleep deprivation, and intense public scrutiny became normalized. As K-pop expanded globally in the 2010s, cracks began to show. Several idols spoke anonymously about anxiety, depression, and burnout, while others never got the chance. High-profile deaths of young artists shocked fans worldwide and forced uncomfortable conversations about mental health, labor rights, and parasocial pressure. Governments began discussing industry reform, contracts were revised, and companies publicly promised change. Though, critics argue much remains cosmetic. Despite the cost, K-pop became one of South Korea's most powerful cultural exports, reshaping global pop aesthetics and fandom behavior. Its outcome is a contradiction: unprecedented success built on an industry still struggling to protect the humans behind the perfection. Sources include South Korean labor investigations, BBC World Reports, and statements from the Korea Creative Content Agency. And as K-pop showed what happens when music is engineered to be flawless, the next genre did the opposite. It embraced discomfort, shock, and deliberate alienation. Case 8. Industrial music. Sound as confrontation. Industrial music didn't ask listeners to enjoy it, it dared them to endure it. Emerging in the late 1970s in the UK and Germany, industrial artists used distorted machinery sounds, abrasive rhythms, and confrontational imagery inspired by war, factories, and authoritarian control. Bands like Throbbing Gristle openly described their work as anti-music, designed to reflect society's ugliness back at itself. Performances featured disturbing visuals, provocative slogans, and themes that made audiences uneasy by design. Governments and venues grew wary. Some shows were canceled. Some artists were surveilled. Critics accused the genre of glorifying fascism or violence, while supporters argued it was exposing those forces, not celebrating them. Industrial music thrived in underground scenes, influencing punk, electronic, and later metal acts. By the 1990s, its DNA reached mainstream audiences through artists like Nine Inch Nails, proving that extreme sound could still achieve commercial success. The outcome was lasting influence rather than mass panic. Industrial reshaped how artists use noise, shock, and performance as tools for social commentary. Sources include archival interviews, academic studies on avant-garde music, and European cultural retrospectives. But while industrial music confronted listeners with discomfort, the next genre overwhelmed them entirely, pushing sound past reason and into digital chaos. Case 9. Hyperpop. Pop music in meltdown. Hyperpop didn't creep into the mainstream, it crashed through it at full volume. Around 2018, a wave of internet-native artists began uploading songs that sounded broken on purpose. Blown-out bass, pitch-shifted vocals, cartoonish melodies, and relentless tempo changes. Inspired by underground collectives and online communities, Hyperpop rejected traditional song structure and embraced excess. It reflected a generation raised on constant notifications, algorithmic feeds, and identity fluidity. The genre thrived on platforms like SoundCloud, Discord, and later TikTok, where chaos was rewarded with attention. Critics initially dismissed it as noise, but major pop artists soon borrowed its techniques, folding distortion and glitch into chart-topping hits. Hyperpop also became a safe haven for LGBTQ+ artists, offering creative freedom outside industry expectations. Its outcome wasn't scandal or censorship, it was absorption. Hyperpop proved that the mainstream could be reshaped from the outside by digital subcultures moving faster than labels could react. Sources include Pitchfork analyses, interviews archived by NME, and streaming platform trend data. And as Hyperpop demonstrated how quickly underground sounds could become commercialized, the next genre emerged quietly, stripped of chaos, stripped of ego, and designed not to demand attention at all. Case 10. Gcham, bass from the margins. The sound didn't come from studios or labels, it came from crowded taxis, cracked speakers, and late-night parties in South Africa's townships. Gcom emerged in Durban in the early 2010s as a stripped-down, bass-heavy form of electronic music that rejected the polished sound of mainstream house. Built on minimal drums, dark atmospheres, and raw repetition, Gcom reflected life in communities, shaped by inequality and economic exclusion. Young producers shared tracks through USB drives and local networks long before global DJs took notice. When Gcom reached international festivals, it challenged Western expectations of African dance music, forcing audiences to confront a sound that wasn't made for export. Despite its global rise, many original creators struggled with exploitation, unpaid bookings, and lack of recognition as international labels capitalized on the movement. The outcome was bittersweet. Gcom redefined global electronic music while exposing the persistent imbalance between cultural influence and financial reward. Sources include South African music archives, interviews published by Resident Advisor, and cultural reporting from the Mail and Guardian. And as Gcom showed how powerful music from the margins could be, the next genre proved what happens when a scene is misunderstood, then quietly resurrected decades later. Case 11. Shoegaze, the genre that disappeared in the early 1990s. British music critics had a nickname for bands who stared at their feet on stage instead of the crowd. Shoegaze, what was meant as an insult, described artists who layered distorted guitars, soft vocals, and heavy effects into massive walls of sound. Bands like My Bloody Valentine and Slowdive created music that felt immersive rather than performative, prioritizing atmosphere over image. At the time, critics dismissed the genre as boring, self-indulgent, and emotionally distant. As Britpop rose, shoegaze was pushed aside, its bands dropped from labels and forgotten by mainstream audiences, but the sound never truly died. Years later, a new generation rediscovered shoegaze online, drawn to its emotional weight and textural depth. The genre resurfaced through streaming platforms, indie films, and bedroom producers, earning the respect it was once denied. Its outcome wasn't immediate impact, but delayed recognition, proof that some music doesn't need approval to survive. Sources include archived UK music press, label histories, and retrospective features from The Guardian and Pitchfork. And as shoegaze showed how music could vanish and return, the next genre challenged the very idea of whether music needed structure at all. Case 12. Noise music. When sound refused to be music. Noise music wasn't meant to be pleasant, accessible, or even listenable. Emerging strongly in Japan during the 1980s, artists like Merzbow pushed sound to its breaking point using feedback, static, and overwhelming volume. Performances were physically intense, sometimes forcing audiences to leave rooms due to sensory overload. Noise rejected melody, rhythm, and traditional musical goals entirely, functioning more like an endurance test than entertainment. Critics questioned whether it was art or provocation, while academic circles debated its legitimacy. Over time, noise found respect in galleries, universities, and experimental festivals, reframing chaos as intentional expression. Its outcome was philosophical rather than commercial. Noise music expanded the definition of art itself, proving that music could exist without comfort or structure. Sources include Japanese experimental music archives, academic publications on sound art, and interviews with pioneering artists. And after noise music stripped sound down to its rawest form, the next genre would emerge doing the opposite, smoothing everything out until music became a background presence rather than an experience. Case 13. Funk. From Memphis tapes to internet adrenaline, the sound was gritty, distorted, and buried under layers of static, like it had been pulled from a damaged cassette left in a hot car. Funk traces its roots back to 1990s Memphis rap, where artists recorded dark, lo-fi tracks that rarely left their local scene. Decades later, internet producers resurrected that sound, looping chopped vocals, heavy bass, and signature cowbells into tracks designed for motion, drifting cars, nighttime driving, and viral clips. Social platforms amplified it, turning funk into a global phenomenon without radio, labels, or traditional promotion. The genre became inseparable from car culture videos and adrenaline-fueled edits, often divorced from its original cultural context. While millions streamed the music, early Memphis artists received little recognition, raising questions about ownership and digital rediscovery. The outcome was a genre reborn through algorithms rather than communities, proving how internet culture can resurrect sounds while rewriting their history. Sources include Memphis Rap Archives, Platform Analytics, and interviews published by Rolling Stone and Complex. As funk demonstrated how old music could gain new life online, another genre emerged that tried to disappear entirely. Case 14. Witch House. Obscurity as identity. Witch House didn't want to be found. Emerging around 2010, the genre wrapped itself in occult imagery, distorted fonts, and deliberately unreadable artist names. Tracks were slow, heavy, and haunted, blending chopped vocals with shadowy electronics. Artists avoided interviews, hid behind symbols, and rejected live performances. The goal wasn't fame, it was mystery. Fans discovered Witch House through obscure blogs and cryptic uploads, creating a scene that thrived on exclusion. Ironically, the secrecy limited its growth. Without clear identities or accessible branding, the genre struggled to sustain itself beyond a dedicated niche. Over time, Witch House faded, leaving behind an aesthetic that would influence fashion, graphic design, and later internet subcultures. Its outcome was intentional impermanence, a genre that chose disappearance over commercialization. Sources include archived blog interviews, cultural retrospectives from Vice, and underground music documentation. That deliberate vanishing act set the stage for something very different, a genre that exploded loudly, burned quickly, and left chaos in its wake. Witch House proved that mystery could be a weapon, but also a limitation. And while that genre chose to fade into shadows, the next one did the opposite, exploding into visibility with no filter, no restraint, and no plan for survival. Case 15, Crunkcore. Chaos without a safety net. Crunkcore hit the internet like a glitch that refused to be fixed. In the late 2000s, the genre fused southern crunk beats with emo screaming, neon aesthetics, and MySpace-era excess. Artists embraced shock value, controversial lyrics, and unfiltered online personas, thriving in a digital space with few boundaries or gatekeepers. The music spread rapidly among teens, fueled by controversy and meme culture, but lacked structure or sustainability. As platforms evolved and audiences matured, Crunkcore collapsed under its own weight, becoming more punchline than movement. Its outcome was a cautionary tale, proof that virality, without longevity, can erase a genre as quickly as it creates it. Sources include archived MySpace data, internet culture analyses, and early blog coverage. Crunkcore's collapse marked the end of an era where shock alone could sustain a scene. In the vacuum it left behind, a very different kind of music began to rise, one built not on chaos, but on comfort, nostalgia, and collective escape. These weren't just sounds, they were movements, experiments, warnings, and mirrors of the worlds that created them. From violence and rebellion to comfort and control, niche music genres don't stay niche for long. They leave fingerprints on culture, technology, and identity itself. If you enjoyed this deep dive, like the video, subscribe to Music Explained, and hit the bell so you don't miss what's next. Because every sound has a story, and some of them echo longer than we expect.